This episode of the Moms Network is brought to you in part by presenting sponsor Calamos Wealth Management, an investment and wealth advisory firm headquartered in Naperville, Illinois, with offices in New York and Miami.
Welcome back to the Moms Network. This segment, we are focusing on women and finance and would like to welcome Anita Knotts, the Senior Vice President of Calamos Wealth Management, to our conversation. Anita is passionate about empowering women to be an active participant in their financial goals and planning, as well as encouraging women to consider the financial industry for their career path. Anita, can you share a little more about your background?
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. And I think one of the things that I can say, I was somewhat not traditional. If you think about what I talk about to women in the community in terms of, taking control of your financial livelihood and making sure that you're doing all of the right things to secure it for the future. Some of the steps that I've taken from a career perspective, a little bit questionable. So I was recruited out of the University of Illinois, started off at a brokerage firm and stayed sort of in that industry in Chicago for a while. Guess what I did after I got my MBA? Quit my job with not a job prospect in sight, loaded up a U-Haul and drove to San Francisco with my husband.
There you go.
So found a job there with Wells Fargo. One of the themes that keeps coming up in my career is the gumption to just go for it, right? Sometimes don't
risk.
Yeah, take the risk, don't overanalyze, and be open to, one of my friends told me, be open to what the universe has to throw at you. Yeah. Really, what's the worst that can happen? You pick another path. Yeah. So I thought I wanted to go into research. Every research person I interviewed with said, nah, not you. So I said, okay, well, I'll try something else. Still within the industry, went to product management at Wells Fargo. After becoming a mom for the first time in San Francisco, we decided to come back to family here because as moms, we need our moms.
Right, and community.
And community.
Yeah. Yep.
So we came back here, and I've been with Calamos ever since for the past 17 years. But I think it's important to note that it's okay to not know what your next step is. It's okay to say this could be the wrong decision. But take the chance, take the risk. I did not graduate from college saying, in 26 years, I'm going to be the senior vice president at a financial services firm. And no, of course not. Right. You take some moves forward, you take some moves backwards, and sometimes it's a lateral move. But just keep pushing, keep pushing. That would be my advice. So, and I was telling somebody last week, I don't call it a job anymore. I tell people I love my work. And that, it's a fulfilling bucket for me right now.
Which is so wonderful. I get to say the same thing, and I really appreciate that in my life. I know I've been divorced for 12 years, but during my marriage, I was always the financial person, right? Yes. I kept the books, I did the checking account, I did the investing, and so I know that as a woman, that's not always the case.
Right.
So can you share a little bit about your perspective on double checking that women are being a part of the conversation and actively involved?
Yes, I was just about to say you're one of the rare women, right, that was actively involved. That is not what we typically find in society. And I think a lot of times women find that, hey, Mr. Husband, if you can work and if you can take all of that, I'll take care of the kids. Just make sure that you've got the work part and the finance part down, and I'll do the rest. I'll do the grocery shopping, I'll do that. And our message is you don't have the luxury of saying that or doing that. Why? The reason is, well, there's four that I can specify. One of them is what you just talked about, divorce. Unfortunately in the society, divorce, high rate of divorce, widowhood. The fact that at some point there are statistics out there that basically say it's highly likely that the woman is going to be a sole decision maker, financially and otherwise, in their household. And then, of course, you hear a lot about gender pay inequality right now. The fact that women make 77, 78 cents on the dollar. So throughout the course of your career, even if you're in the workforce, you're making less money. And then let's not forget the fact that many women opt out for a few years, right? So opt out,
children.
Either children, but also adult parents or aging parents that you're trying to take care of. So already you're starting out of the gate behind the gate.
Right.
So all of these reasons combined, really, to me, it's not a luxury to say, I'm going to outsource my financial security to somebody else. And this has nothing to do with the strength of your marriage, by the way. What we advocate for, be an equal participant. You're not wrestling control away from your spouse. You're saying, hey, let me understand a little bit more. What are your objectives in all of this?
Or even, where do we bank?
Where do we bank?
Where are our investments?
Would you believe many women don't know that?
Yeah.
What accounts do you have? Do you have retirement accounts? Do you have, just individual accounts? Is there something set up in just your name, or is it just his name? These are questions that are fair, reasonable, and important to ask.
I always remember a friend of mine from high school. We were childhood friends, and her dad passed away suddenly. And we were all, at the time, I was just married. All of us were either newly married or new moms. We were all very young in our relationships. And her mom, he owned businesses, and she didn't know where anything was. And I remember sitting at their kitchen table right after her dad had passed, and her mom coming over to us and saying, girls, if you've learned anything from this, do not stay out of the finances, be in them, ask questions, because she didn't know where they banked. And then she had this chain of dry cleaners that she had to pay employees, and she didn't know where that was. But she was in the middle of grief, and I thought, on top of that, now she's got this financial thing, and I will never ever forget her looking at us and saying that. And at the time, we had zero money, which is one of my favorite. You have a really great phrase that you've said, don't start seeing a financial, don't wait till you have money to see a financial planner.
Correct.
Because you need to see it before you have the money.
Right. That's exactly right. And one of the other points you made, when you are going through trauma or crisis situation in your life, is that the time you want to take a crash course tutorial in financial life management? No. So to your point, you may not have a lot in wealth right now, right? And that term is very intimidating to women. I remember when Kathy and I first met, Kathy kind of said, what do you mean by wealth? Because a lot of women don't define themselves that way. And you're absolutely right. But you don't wait until that point. It's always important to know where everything sits before you get to that point of trauma. And trauma is a strong word, but based on the statistics that I was just mentioning earlier, it's an unfortunate case that at some point we're all going to have to deal with it. So,
I think we also, women have different approaches to finance. I know my husband is in the finance industry. So when we're sitting down with a financial planner, his view of the same paper in front of us, I guess, on the computer is different than mine. And because that's not my background, I can approach it in a different way. And sometimes, I'll never forget, we were sitting there and the financial planner goes, oh, well, that's true. I didn't think about it that way. And I'm thinking, I'm sitting here with 2 MBAs. I have a communication degree. What do I know? But sometimes things are a little, more obvious to those of us who are outside of an industry. As opposed to someone who's used to numbers and finance all day.
You make a great point. I think if we were to look at ourselves as an industry, just introspectively, I don't think we've done a very good job of speaking to women. And you just brought up an excellent point. Advisors traditionally have spoken like men because it's from men. So the other part of my passion is trying to get more women on the front lines in the industry because like communicates with like. So a lot of times what women shy away from is that investment jargon and ratios and statistics, and those are important, but what about goals? What about what do you want this money to do for you? What about more of the qualitative approach? That tends to be missing.
How does it affect your family? And your children?
That's exactly.
And my parents, that health or family, whatever those things are in that, again, in that community, in your family. I think that's a big thing that women are a little more focused on.
Women want the money. When we ask our female clients, what do you want this money to do for you? The first thing they go for is, am I going to be able to take care of my kids or my parents or my husband and I? Are we going to be able to travel or have the life that we want post-retirement? It's a very... I always come back to qualitative instead of quantitative. They are looking at the quality of life, not just for themselves,
100%.
but the people, their loved ones around them. Whereas with men, and I'm not saying one is bad, one is good, I'm saying they're two different approaches, so we have to adjust our approach. Men are going to look at did I beat the guy next door last quarter in my portfolio, right? And for women, it just goes far beyond numbers.
Yeah.
So.
How do you think, as an advisor and as an industry, we can close that gap and bring in more females into the industry to balance it out?
Sure. I think some of what I'm doing right now is starting with talking to young women. I don't think you can, of course, you can talk to middle-aged women and start talking about the benefits of being in this industry. One of the benefits, regardless of what age you are in this profession, you're helping people.
Yeah.
You're helping people. I can't put dollars and cents to the value that I feel when I've sat down with the client and myself, my team, we brought up something that they had never considered before. That's like an aha moment that you've created for somebody that's going to impact their life positively, right? But when we sit down and talk to women, what I've noticed is that they are most of the time most comfortable when there is a woman in the room. She doesn't have to be the primary advisor, but if she's sitting at the table, if she's noticing you and your concerns and your appetite for risk and your goals, that's half the battle. So when I'm out in the community, I think it's important to talk to young women, be it college, high school even sometimes, and we have some very good organizations in the Naperville community that are focused on development for younger women. So I'm trying to make sure Calamos is a part of that mix in terms of talking to those young women and saying, hey, have you considered this as a career option? And to clarify, there are women in our industry. What I see sometimes happening is that they come in and they go into behind the scenes positions. Operations or human resources or marketing, all are good. All are required, right? But God, I would love to see more on the front lines actually talking to the end client and making that impact.
Well, and I love that comment you made about seeing, even if it's just an advisor in the room that looks like that is them, because that gives women in any situation more confidence to say what she's feeling and not feel as intimidated because I see somebody in the room that feels like me.
Yes.
And I feel like I now can say what I want to say.
Getting the feeling like I'm being heard, I'm being seen in this conversation.
Right. Absolutely. And sometimes that's all that it really takes. So diversity in the industry is something that we're all striving for, that we should be striving for. And I think the needle's moving. I think it's moving slowly, personally, but I think it's nudged.
Yeah. When I was in chiropractic school, and that was 21 years ago, there was only 20% female.
Yeah.
And now it's 51%.
Wow.
So I think there's a lot of industries that are shifting and more women are coming in as they're being inspired earlier, like you said.
Yes.
So,
Well, and children notice too. So at my husband's firm, my 7-year-old will say, they have interns for the summer, right? And so he'll say, here's who I've hired. And she'll say, there's never any girls. Why don't you work with any girls? And he said, honey, we haven't had any applicants. I promise you, if a girl apply, obviously.
Maybe she can apply.
Right. At 7.
She would be really good.
She might be. Exactly.
all right.
Watching.
Well, Anita, thank you so much for joining us today. Such a great conversation.
It's a great group. I loved it. Enjoyed myself.
Playing an active role in your financial health and planning is extremely important. Thanks for watching the Moms Network. Remember, you are always invited. Thank you.
This episode of the Moms Network is brought to you in part by presenting sponsor Calamos Wealth Management, an investment and wealth advisory firm headquartered in Naperville, Illinois, with offices in New York and Miami.